Hello, I'm Dori Nando. You can catch up with all the fun on the Cosmopolitan Mix and on all our shows via podcast. Just go to My Joy Online podcast and search for your favorite show and relive those moments all over again. Only on Joy 99.7 FM, radio for discerning listeners.
Super Hits Radio, Joy 99.7.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. This morning, as you have been aware, almost all through the week, the CDD Ghana has conducted a survey, post-election survey. And the survey throws up very interesting results, including a certain majority percentage of Ghanaians who don't seem to have faith that things are working and will work. Some in the NPP, including Mark Menu, the man in charge of elections in the party, says the results is more propaganda than a real survey results. So we will be testing the reality of the findings in the CDD survey that is causing controversy. How many months after President Akufo-Addo was sworn in for his second term, no MMDCEs yet? What is happening? But is he breaking the law in this process? More importantly, when will the various districts, municipalities have their district assembly, their leaders who will be able to take substantive decisions? Because presently they are barred from doing so. President travels again and it causes yet another controversy. We are informed that he decided to abandon the luxury jet he used the first time and has gone in for another one, which may cost even more. Is it time to regulate presidential travels? Should the country sell its presidential jet if it doesn't need it any longer? We ride back to deal with these vexed matters. Welcome back. Samson's Stake, I title it 5 years jail for sharing fake news. So this is my special occasion where I get the opportunity to, of 5 minutes, to share my views on certain issues with you. And often it has to do with questions of law, even though I may couch them in such a way that the legalese doesn't get you to not to understand. So I want to thank you all who have been reaching out to me through social media and the rest and asking me to deal with specific issues for today, including the teenage girls. The teenage girls, if you have read, I dealt with the teenage pregnancy that we have, over 14,000 girls all impregnated, defiled, because they are less than 16 defiled, but nobody is facing anything in court anywhere. I dealt with it in in May. And for those of you who say I should write about the Reverend Minister saying we are witches if we criticize the thing, well, he pays tax. I also pay tax. The thing that is going to be done is our tax money that is going to be used. He has a right to talk about it. You too exercise your right. So my take this morning, 5 years jail for sharing fake news. Vaccine hesitancy is a major threat to our collective health and safety, as COVID-19 doesn't give any clue of abating to vanish. We must continue to fight COVID to end its devastation. Africa faces double trouble, struggling to get the vaccines and bust dangerous myths and fake news scaring some of its people who can't afford or don't want to observe the protocols. And the protocols, they are the easiest, cheapest, yet best protection. I felt sad listening to health authorities in Ashanti sounding helpless about some residents circulating a fake video to scare people in the ongoing vaccinations. Let me repeat this caution. You can't be thrown into jail for simply being a conveyor belt for false information. Yes, for merely passing on that piece of information or video causing fear and alarm. You are a candidate for jail. You don't have to be the originator or the manufacturer of the false or misleading information. Your crime is in simply sharing that panic-inducing false statement, rumor, or report without verifying the authenticity. By Section 76 of the Electronic Communications Law, that WhatsApp or Facebook post can bring you before a judge for a fine of up to 36,000 Ghana cedis or up to 5 years in jail. If you are lucky to be prosecuted under Section 208 of our criminal code, you may get up to 3 years in prison for your reckless act. To the extent it is completely false and there is no proof that people develop electromagnetic bodies after a jab, police in the Ashanti region must get to work on this and now. Think before you share that message. If you won't help the COVID fight, just don't hurt it. That's your legal light, and that's my take. This show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Son, seeing is believing. Waylead, home is where you start. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. DBS Industries and MG Auto Trading, official distributors of MG vehicles in Ghana. We'll take a quick break, come to introduce my guest to you, and then we canvass the vexed issues. You're welcome. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news and answers platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest, Dr. Kojo Pumpunia Sante, who is Director Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana. Also here, Samuel Okudjeto Ablakwa, MP, North Tongue, and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Joining us via Zoom, Yao Boabinga Samoa, Director of Communications, the New Patriotic Party, and Dr. Eric Uduro-Sai is a governance expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time to join us here this morning on Newsfile.
Pleasure, Samson. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Great. Let's have a feel of you. Yabi and YB and Dr. Osai. Okay. All right. Hello, Doc. Okay, I can hear your voice, but it's a bit faint.
All right.
Thank you very much. I think that's good now. All right, so let's begin this way. Let's listen to the Director of Research at CDD, Dr. Edem Selom, speak about Selome, speak about the survey results, and then we'll hear also from Peter McMenu, the 2020 MPP campaign coordinator, as well as Alex Segbefia, head of International Relations Desk of the NDC.
Yes, but the majority expressed lack of confidence in government's ability to expand the $1 million per constituency initiative. That's a whooping 61% are saying that they don't think that the $1 million per constituency initiative will be fulfilled. So in view of all this, what are the priorities that citizens are expecting government to pay attention to? As in many of our surveys, except the pre-election survey that we conducted last year, unemployment has topped that list again. Again, you can see that 62% over that's the highest so far in terms of people's views about whether corruption can be kept in the next 4 years. Again, still on the government's confidence in the ability of the government to consolidate and expand policy initiatives, we see that there's an equal split of respondents in their confidence in the government's ability to consolidate the gains in the planting, rearing for food and job program.
Pre-election, it was I think 46. So it's only a 1% increase. Go and check them. You see, before you do this, you should have got it. I have my copy of the 2020 pre-election survey here. Oh, of course, if you look at the hula baloo people are talking about, and you look at the survey results, you will be amazed. I mean, look at what people are saying. It means that there's so much propaganda than the actual work that's going on. That's the way I see from the results. And we must look at actuals than propaganda.
There was also the point about your MPs as well as the president's own votes dropping. They make the point that as a result of your MPs not doing well, and also the president himself. Listen.
This republic started in 1992. MPP had 0 in parliament in 1992. In 1996, we rose to 62 out of 200-seat parliament. In 2000, when President Kufuor won for the first time, we rose again to 98. In 2004, we rose again to 100 and something. So MPP is not a party that has been losing parliamentary seats. Not at all. So you must check the history of parliamentary seats before you ask this question. I think on the whole, we've been doing better because gradually from 92, we have been increasing our seats all along. So don't take us for granted.
And I don't want to get, but we feel there's a culture of impunity when it comes to government officials. And the more that happens day in, day out, the more issues occur. When violence occurs during elections, people have behaved in a certain way and no actions are taken, then how would Ghanaians feel confident that corruption will be dealt with? So I think it goes without saying. And don't forget, things have happened even since, which were not captured in this survey. So to be interesting, I mean, that is one aspect of the survey which should not surprise any Ghanaians, and it should be a wake-up call for the government to begin to deal with issues pertaining to corruption, not only when it applies to the opponents or your opponents. Look at what is happening in the Puni trial, for example. The lengths to which people are going to keep a judge who has been deemed to has made comments he shouldn't have made, and they want to bring him back. So you can see that when it involves certain people, there's some action. But when it involves their own, then so there's a culture of impunity.
Right. So CDD is right here with us. Let's find out what, first of all, inspired such a project. The president has gone through, the NPP have gone through elections, and they have been maintained. So what informs the need to test their popularity, so to speak?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning again to our viewers and listeners. So, as a research think tank, we are always looking for ways in which we can get citizen voice, to inform public policy. If we had resources, we had an endowment, there would be more that we would do than even this. In reality, you want to be able to have a very good system, almost like a panel study, a core group of citizens. You can change them over time, that would, on any government policy implementation, to get feedback and constantly have that kind of engagement. So we've done pre-election surveys, and we started pre-election surveys for the first time in 2016, and we were able to repeat it in 2020. And the reason why we started pre-election surveys is that it's a good method for giving institutions that are tasked to conduct peaceful and credible elections an early warning to see where the gaps are so that they can correct them ahead of the elections. And so far, I think those have been very, very useful. We always have we have separate briefings for the Electoral Commission, the NCC, security sector, media, so that we know where the holes are that we have to plug. And for me, those things have been very valuable. We wanted to do a post-election survey because it is always very good to have an early test of where the citizens are once you have a government installed. So the government installed would have had a manifesto. Now that that government has been given a mandate to govern, what are people's expectations going forward? Because then it helps you as a government to also sort of manage your expectations. And you're looking at the policies that they're doing. A post-election also would try to get an early sense of what do people think about the election that just passed. We have some of those questions, but in this release, because it's so far away from the last election, and we've had debates, we had a court case and all of that, we've not really delved into those things. But the key is really to get an early feedback. What are their prospective evaluations looking forward to all the things that have been promised? And what do they expect government to do? And that can always guide government to manage how it is going to implement those policies. So that is the motivation. As I said, if we have resources, it is something that we'll do every time, and we even to do more half year. So in the middle of, you want to be able to do that assessment and so on and so forth. So that's really the motivation.
On the views on policies, rule of law, and governance, the survey reveals that fewer than half of Ghanaians are optimistic that in the next 4 years, the Akufo-Addo NPP-led government will perform much better in addressing educational needs, providing reliable supply of electricity, maintaining roads and bridges, and providing water and sanitation services. Then only 1/3, that's 35%, are optimistic about government's ability to reduce crime. Only about 3 in 10 Ghanaians, or fewer, are optimistic about government's ability to fight corruption. So you have 30%. And promote collaboration between the ruling and opposition parties. In general, most Ghanaians expect changes in the way the Akufo-Addo-led NPP government handles a number of national development issues in the next 4 years. I'll read just this one last one and then get you to speak to it. Majority of Ghanaians, 52%, are confident that the second Akufo-Addo-led MPP government will consolidate the gains of the free SHS program, but a similar proportion, 57%, have no confidence in government to expand the 1D1F initiative across the country.
Okay, thank you. So there are two sets of questions in terms of the results that you have just shared. One is to do with a prospective evaluation of government service delivery. So the question is, looking ahead, do you expect the following conditions to be better or worse by the end of the Akufo-Addo second term? And you're right, educational needs, 45% say it will be much better or better. And then if you compare that to, say, reducing crime, which is 35%, saying it will be much better or better. And then you have 41% saying it will be much worse. When I look at, and actually when I was coming, I went back to the pre-election survey data, just to look at what was the evaluation of performance. Because I think if you look at the two data points, some of the stories are consistent. Right. So in the, if I can just get it. So if in the pre-election survey, these were the performance ratings for government. So preventing the spread of COVID-19 was almost 83%. Electricity supply was very high, 76. Educational needs, 75. So that's almost always been on a positive track. Sanitation, 68. Preventing political violence, 66. Reducing crime was 58. So even though there were very high, ratings, even in the pre-election survey, fighting corruption was 50%. So when you see this current sentiment after the election, after a couple of months of the government being in operation, for me it's not surprising. It's quite consistent. I can actually go back to 2019 of the Afrobarometer survey also to look at the issues of corruption and other evaluations to show the same sentiment. The story I read from this is that when it comes to free SHS, it's clear that there is popular support for it. People, after a certain number of years of implementation, people still accept that it is making an impact on their lives, but they are also seeing the challenges. And that's why you see the 52%. The pre-election, the ratings were in the 80s and so on and so forth. But they are now seeing it, so they can relate to it. The planting for food and jobs, and then for expanding the one district, one factory, that is an interesting one. But that is not also surprising from the pre-election survey that we did in 2020, when we asked what is the assessment of delivery of the one district, one factory, it was 48%, right? And then the one village, one dam was 46%. So even, in terms of how people assessed in the first 4 years, for those particular initiatives, it was low. Now, why is that the case? And that's where sometimes it becomes very speculative, because this is a survey. You are not asking people their justifications for, but compared to, say, and this is hazarding a guess, compared to, say, free SHS, where it impacts on people directly, there's a large number of people who are benefiting because they have wards who are going to secondary school. The one district, one factory, it's building a factory in a district. We know that the numbers are not many, right? And for a lot of these factories, maybe they are now even going to construct and so on and so forth. So people are not directly feeling it. So when you ask them, they haven't seen a factory in their district, they are not going to say that it's likely that it will happen. And then they have looked at the 4 years and the rate at which the factories are coming up, and decided that, at this rate, we are not likely to accomplish what we want to do. 1 million constituency.
Just this week or so, I think he commissioned one such a one.
Yeah, I think a rubber factory or so. Uh-huh.
Now, is it your sense that the people had a sense that this was a promise for the first term, and very little has been delivered? Otherwise, it is being delivered, is it not?
Well, so that's the question that the nuance I'm trying to deal with. That unlike a free SHS, a policy like a free SHS is easy to see the benefit if you have a ward or your family. A factory is a much harder, even though it's one district, one factory. And therefore, you say, if I see it in my district, and the point is that it might even be, these districts are huge. I mean, there are some districts that are huge. It might happen in, but at least you might hear about it. But if it's not happening at the regularity with which it's happening, and as I said, it's not all districts that are operational, all the factories that are operational. Some are starting off, and so maybe people look at the pace of it and say, we don't think that we will actually be able to accomplish it. 1 million I was just making an example of the 1 million which we tracked from 2017 to 2020. And in most cases where it was done well, you could see the impact on the community, whether it was a sanitation facility or whatever. You could see that because there were still a lot of them that were not completed, people will look at that and say, we don't think that you'll be able to accomplish it. Oh, we didn't see our 1 million worth of whatever, and therefore we really don't think this particular initiative. So I am not surprised that they make a distinction between these different types of initiatives, and that's where I think, for me, there's more credibility and value in the kind of findings that we are seeing. That is not just one side. There are positives, but there are also negatives.
In the area of corruption, did you say 50%? Because
in the pre-election survey in 2019.
Oh, that's what you meant.
So I wanted to say that even in the pre-election survey, evaluation of performance, it was 50%. So that was, just the average. And now you get in a post-election survey where people are only, 30% are saying, we expect that it will be better. It's not too surprising for me.
The results is that Ghanaians are split. That's 48 against 48 on the government's ability to ensure that the rule of law is upheld in the next 4 years. Majorities are not confident in its ability to protect the country's financial resources. That's 53%. And curb corruption and official impunity. That's 62%.
Yeah.
So this has gotten how bad? In percentage terms.
It's so unless you want to, if you compare it to say 2019 Afrobarometer survey, and I have a slide here that a trend slide, which I think it would be useful. Just 1 minute.
You're still here on Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And we are trying to go through the CDD's post-election survey that has very interesting things about governance presently.
So I have a slide
and
here.
On the matters of people's opinions on the rule of law, policies, and governance, we just are sharing some bits in that area with you. Yes.
Okay, so I'll take a trend data from 2014 and try to explain it. So 2014 Afrobarometer, the question was asked, in your opinion, over the past year, has the level of corruption in this country increased, decreased, or stayed the same? So 2014, you had almost 83% saying that's increased somewhat or a lot. And then 2017, it came down from 83 to 39, right? Saying that. So that was a big drop. Now, what happened in 2017? A new government has been installed. There is confidence. The government ran on an anti-corruption campaign. Special prosecutor is to be set up, all that. So it drops. Then 2019, what happens? The same question is asked. Has it increased a lot? It moves from 39 to 53%. All right. And then if you get to the pre-election survey where there's an evaluation of government, that's 50%. And then after the election, it's jump up again. So for me, as I said, it's a story that is consistent, that people are expressing a worry. What is worrying for me is that this is prospective evaluation. If the people are saying that they don't think that anything will happen, then that is a problem, because we cannot surrender to corruption. So there is a challenge for government, but it's a challenge for citizens.
But how representative is the 2,400 sample? Okay. Even though you spoke to people in their own, local dialect, in Chi, in Ewe, Ga, Dagbani, and Dagari.
Sure. So let me. This will be an exercise in research methodology, and we keep.
So I'm interested in the representative figure.
Sure.
The 2,400.
So that in any research methodology, you are able to generalize from a sample, depending on how the sample is drawn. The key to being able to generalize from a quantitative survey is randomization. So you have to be very, very diligent in terms of the way in which you select your sample. So for all our samples, when you say a national representative sample, it has to mirror whatever sample you take. And in our context with our population, anything from 1,000, even 800, it's just that your margin of error might be a problem. But anything from 1,000, 1,002 to whatever, at some point, it doesn't make any difference whether or not you are doing 5,000 or whatever. So it is, does it mimic the demographic, parameters within the national population? So even the enumeration areas that you generate, it is not generated by the researcher. You go to statistical service, they run a program, and they randomly select enumerator areas. Wherever it throws you, that is your data point. You have to go and collect the information from there. But because we have been doing this for over 20 years, we even have additional steps. When you get to the enumerator area, you have a work pattern, which is also random. Then when you get to the household, there is a process for selecting a respondent, which is also supposed to help with the randomization, so that at every step, every single adult Ghanaian has an equal chance of being selected. That is what gives it the margin of error, in our case, plus or minus 2%, or the 95% confidence level. Right. But if you go through everything from formal education to religion, employment status, they are all mimicking the national population.
What would be your preliminary comments on this, Sami? And there's a portion that I would like you to address directly, because the people have expectations of the 8th Parliament. They acknowledge that we have gone into an election where the NPP has lost as many as 32 seats, and that Parliament is presently split, 137, 137. And you have been handed a hung Parliament, and their expectations have been so clearly expressed. So we'll find out from you how you think you guys are doing in Parliament, and compare that with what people also think you are doing.
Well, thank you, Samson, and good morning to you, good morning to the panel, and to all our viewers and listeners across the globe. First of all, I think it's important to commend CDD for this post-election survey. It's really useful. It will help us improve on evidence-based policy making, and those of us who are in the space as political actors, it helps as a guide, particularly if you look at the responses on Parliament, as you have said, on the expectations of the people, of public office holders generally. I mean, I paid attention to those slides. I mean, the people are saying that they want to see more accountability. They want to see integrity. They want to see honesty. They want to see respect for them.
Right.
You know, so these are very important guides that when you pay attention to, ultimately, it will help improve our governance architecture.
Let me share just that bit with our viewers. And it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing. I've become aware that people don't want me to say things this way, but I'm sorry, I'm just tired of this thing. So I'd rather say it than play the ostrich. It's disappointing, terribly disappointing. Expectations of public office holders. Ghanaians expect politicians and public officials to be accountable for their actions. 40%. That's what they are saying. Show integrity in their work. 24%. That's how low. Be honest. 24%. So honesty. Respectful. 19%. And competent. Also 19%. That clearly is very terrible. Yes, you proceed with what you were saying.
Yeah, so I'm glad you highlighted that. But if you come to the main body, if you look at how the questions were framed, public-private standard of politicians, public office holders. Ghanaians expect politicians and public officials to be accountable for their actions, show integrity in their work, be honest, respectful, and competent. And it provides a whole list of other qualities. I agree with you that on some of the variables, I thought that it would have been higher than what we have. But it's a very useful guide nonetheless. There are a few preliminary concerns I have. One, the timing of the data collection. I would have thought that typically for post-election surveys, it should be ideally within the month, maximum within the first 2 months.
First quarter.
This ran into May. The data was collected in May, I think from the 23rd of May to June. So it can blunt the efficacy of the outcomes somewhat. But I don't think that it should take away substantially. The other concern I have is with the survey sample. If you look at the adult population, the 2019 projection, you notice that for the Ashanti region, you can expect that as politicians will pay keen attention to this. For the Ashanti region, the projected adult population is 19.3%, but the survey sample is 19.5%, which is some 0.2% higher than the projected sample. But when you look at the Volta region, which is a 5.7% 2019 projection, you have 5.5%, a 0.2% lower. So,
but I mean, because you're talking about a sample.
Yes.
So you're talking about a point, you know. So already, when you make the adjustments,
well,
it doesn't materially. It would not make any difference.
Yeah, but you know, if it accumulates in terms of the weighting, but I don't think that it should you know significantly take away. It's just that I mean next time, because of these two competing regions, if we just be on the mark exactly, it will help.
No, but then you'll be fudging it. So you have to be careful not to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
no, not interrupt you.
Yeah. No. I mean that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I also thought that in terms of the overview, how you couch the parliamentary
questions
outcome, it could be misleading. If you say the MPP lost 32 parliamentary seats, out of which 31 went to the NDC and 1 to an independent candidate, leaving both MPP and NDC with 137 seats each. That could be misleading.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a net, you can say a net gain of 32 for the MPP, net.
Oh, you're talking about
net gain of 31 for the NDC, a net loss of 32 for the MPP, because it's not as though the 32 seats the MPP won, lost, I should say. The NDC won 31 out of those 32 seats. Because,
okay.
Because you know,
Because
we were also losing
lost,
some seats. We lost Hohoi,
No, I take your point.
Karga and all of that.
I take your point on that.
So just those minor issues. But when you look at the overall work, it's a very useful
But you are not
guide.
suggesting that that is factually inaccurate. Is that what you're saying?
It's
the interpretation.
The interpretation is misleading.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that
as if NPP lost all of those to you.
Yes.
And you lost nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's just I think it's just about the presentation. How is that?
The fact though remains that they lost those to you. You also lost something.
Yes.
Yes.
That's all the difference you want to communicate.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You know, but if you look at the historic nature of the 2020 elections, this post-election survey is crucial. I mean, this is the first time that we have a hung parliament, the history of our country. So that's a very significant development. We need to probe further. Number two, this is the first time since we've been voting in 1992 that you've had an incumbent lose its majority in parliament. If you look at the trend, in 96, President Rawlings gained more seats. In 2004, President Kufuor gained more seats. In 2012, the NDC, President Mills had died, God bless his soul, President Mahama took over. But you notice that there was an uptick in the number of seats. This is the first time that you have a president going into a second term and his parliamentary outcomes reduced. So I paid attention to the details there. And it's quite telling. You know, initially, before this survey, the impression had been created as though the problem really was just with the MPs. It's the MPs who didn't do their work, who were not, diligent, who didn't, relate well with their constituents. But your survey is revealing that it was also a referendum on the president's outcome.
That's right.
Because if you look at the two key indicators of your findings, that is the
perceptions about
the perception about the president's performance, and then the perception about the president's policy decisions. If you put those two together, 21% and 18%, that's huge. That's 39%. In terms of MPs and government appointees, probably at the assembly and all of that, it's only 19%. So this post-election survey reveals that the president must take a greater share of blame in terms of the poor performance of the MPP in the 2020 polls, which is quite revealing. The other matter of concern is that if you do the analysis from all the Afrobarometers, 2017, 2019, which you have alluded to earlier, and you juxtapose it with this post-election survey, it is clear that confidence in the president is at an all-time low. The president must be very worried about that. If you take the 2019 Afrobarometer, it actually had listed the presidency as one of the most trusted institutions. It was army, religious leaders, and the presidency, 72%, 63%, and 58% respectively, when it comes to the fight against corruption. At least at the time, he had been spared as an institution that we could count on him to fight corruption. But now you look at how it declined with the pre-election and then post-election, even a further decline. When you have a staggering 53% saying that they can't trust the president to protect the public purse, and then 62%, one of the highest numbers in this work, saying that they cannot have confidence in the president to fight corruption and to uproot or curb impunity. That is telling. That is telling. And I think the president has to sit up, because this is coming at a time that if you look at even the commentary from independent analysts, just this week we heard what Professor PLO Lumumba had to say. He said he had high expectations. And indeed, in 2017, he had voiced out very high expectation for the Ghanaian president. He thought that he had said the right things, he had struck the right chord, and that he would move this country in the right direction. Now he says the president is moving in a negative direction, with a jet speed.
Yeah.
That's what he adds. And we all know that Professor Lumumba is somebody who is well respected, doesn't mince words. This week, on the Super Morning Show on this same network, Professor Adai said that, look, the corruption, fight, we are losing it. It's become too endemic, and we cannot even develop. Businesses cannot thrive because of how endemic corruption has become. Emil Short too, has said the same thing. So all of this validate the work of CDD. That's why when I heard Mr. McMenu in the clip that you played earlier, saying that all of this is just propaganda, and should not be taken seriously, I thought that was not a good response.
To a certain level, I understand McMenu to be saying that the people have been fed propaganda.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what
but it is not exactly the case that CDD has gone to do propaganda. Okay. I try to analyze his statement, and that's
the way I understood it.
That's the way I want to appreciate
that
it.
People have been fed propaganda.
He says,
that's why they are responding that way.
Yes, it is like the case where Yaboavian Samoa just joined us, and we'll come to you soon.
Yeah,
it is like the case where Yaboavian Samoa responds to President Mahama and says, times are not hard. It is rather the NDC or people like Mahama who is making you feel or believe that times are hard, but times are not.
You see, that interpretation even makes matters worse. If you say that the corruption concerns that Ghanaians have, that even now you have all these, respected international, analysts talking about, it is perception, then it is even an insult. It means that you are totally oblivious. You are failing to recognize. And you see, the first part of the solution, which to me is more fundamental, is to acknowledge that there is a problem. If you are failing to acknowledge
that governments don't acknowledge.
If you are failing to acknowledge that there's a problem.
Governments never acknowledge.
If you take...
You have been information minister, and you know that when the corruption perception, index come out, the last thing you do is to make an acknowledgement that, yes, it's right. We are as corrupt as the survey says. You don't do that.
Well, that is wrong. You see, you should be able to accept that this survey, this research is cause for concern. We accept it. We will work on it. And you can go further to talk about what you are doing. But where you are dismissive and you say it's all propaganda, the people are being fed with propaganda. The PDS scandal is not propaganda. The Ameri Innovation contract, which will have caused this country a loss of some $800 million. It's not propaganda. There are over 5 million tons of fuel that got missing at Bost. Up to now, nobody has been held liable. It's not propaganda. The Australia visa scandal, that's not propaganda. I mean, there have been very palpable, tangible, concrete examples of corruption. The president himself has had to fire people. He's had to promise investigations, except that often these investigations lead us nowhere. Nobody is held liable. As we speak, nobody has been made to account for the Australia visa scandal. Then the president's own conduct. Look at how the president hounded out the Auditor General. This is not perception. These are things that happened in real terms. Civil society organizations were up in arms. They even proceeded to court. They counseled the president that what you are doing is wrong. This is a celebrated Auditor General of high repute and anti-corruption czar. His only mistake, Yaw Damlevo's only mistake, or the only crime he committed, was to dare to surcharge the senior minister. We all know what happened in this country. That is not perception. That is not propaganda. These are real matters that happen. What did the special prosecutor say?
The senior minister fought the surcharge in court legally, and he won. What do you say about that?
But for daring to even go after the senior minister. And you see, this is a fearless Auditor General who is going after everybody. I know of former appointees, former ministers who he has surcharged. Some of them are even in court challenging that. He has not spared anybody. You can't say this is somebody who probably is biased or is partisan or had an axe to grind with the current administration. No, we all celebrate him. And those are the kind of people we need. People who head institutions and are fearless, are bold. It doesn't matter who you are, what office you occupy, they will do their work legally. And see how he was treated. The circumstances leading to the resignation of the special prosecutor. What did Martin Amidu himself say about, he says that the biggest mistake he made in his life was to believe that the president genuinely wanted to fight corruption, because that was what led him to accept that position. This is a man who had been celebrated by the president, by the current administration. In his epistles now, he says that, look, the mother serpent of corruption is a person who has disappointed him the most, the president. So you see, it is even more affronting when persons who we can count on to be truthful, to be honest, to show respect to us, try to just be dismissive and to say that, oh, it's all propaganda.
Okay,
we cannot win the corruption war.
Well, you are counting these matters and you know, attributing them to the NPP and they suffering, if you like, the perception, so to speak. But they will tell you that the present matter of the sift and switch case, this was such a bad deal that they inherited, and they have come to correct it. A big deal. So why? They are rather protecting the public purse. And this was a huge protection of the public purse. You don't agree?
I certainly do not agree, because you see, if you look at the scope of work, what was renegotiated and what Gibbs was asked to do, I am told, I'm reliably informed, that that is not the original scope, that Gibbs is now carrying out a smaller scope of work. So you are basically comparing apples and oranges.
Just hold on for me quickly. Dr. Dross, I will beg you to hold on just a few more minutes for me. Let's hear from Yabuabinga Samoa, and then we can hear from you. Wabi, thank you very much for joining us. What are you saying from an official standpoint of the party in government about the survey results report?
Thank you very much, Something. I hope you can hear me.
Very clearly.
Something very good. Something, first of all, let me debunk something you have quoted authoritatively, which comes from Joy FM's own. It's been very unfair to me, but as a political media person, I have taken it in my stride. This headline that Yabuabia Samoa says Ghana is good was not true. I never said that anywhere. I had a live press conference, and I will quote the paragraph that Joy have inferred that from. I said, you have voted, and you may not have received the benefits of your vote. Worse, you may only partially have received the benefits of your vote, and you think you deserve more. In that situation, when somebody comes singing that you are worse off, you are very likely to believe the person. This is what I said. And then Joy FM has a headline saying, Yabuabia Samoa says Ghana is good. It wasn't fair to me. However, it's graced to the meal. So I accept it and I move on, but it genuinely wasn't fair. And I wouldn't have commented, but for how you've authoritatively stated it. So
but you are saying what you said meant what?
I'm saying that. Listen to me again. I said, you have voted. You have not received the benefits of your vote, which means you are suffering. And then there's a second group who have only partially received their expectations. And I said that is even worse. Not receiving at all and only partially receiving. I use the word worse. That is even worse. However, in that state, when somebody comes singing to you that you are worse off and that things are bad, you are more likely to listen to the person. That's what I said.
Mm.
You are more likely to listen to that person in the mood you are in because you haven't received the benefits of your vote. However, we, the MPP, are working towards making sure you receive that benefit.
Okay.
That is what.
So
Yes.
you are saying on the record that you never said or suggested that it is rather President Mahama who is making them to believe that things are hard.
You are turning it around. Mahama comes to you saying that things are hard. He's lying. I can say that.
Okay.
But I didn't say Ghana is good. That is.
All right. Thank you. Let's go to the substantive. Let's go to the substantive questioning. Okay.
Yabuabin says Ghana is good. That's not fair to Yabuabin. But as for Mahama, I can say whatever I think Mahama is thinking or suggesting or perceiving or saying. You understand what I'm saying?
All right.
But to categorically state in a headline that Yabuabin Samoa says Ghana is good and that your mama is only pushing perceptions, it's not fair to me. Joy FM was not fair to me.
Okay.
I want to go on record on that because you quoted it authoritatively. Now let's go to the survey. I want to commend CDD. Sincerely, it's important. Our democracy needs the kind of air that independent institutions can blow through it. We, the party, also have surveys, but we've been strengthening our ability to research and survey every election. And so, even as CZD is surveying, we have also surveyed pre and post election. I want to commend them. On the prelims, I really want us to realize that this is the typical Ghanaian who was interviewed by the CDD. 73% are up to the age of 45. Doc, am I right?
Let me just.
Let's look at the statistics. You have about 30%, and then 30%, and then 25%. Yeah. So
So that's,
if you add that up.
Yeah,
Literally 73% are up to 45 years.
Yeah.
And that means that they are the majority of the voter. Yeah. And they have a mean age of 38. So these are people who have a stake in the future of this country. If you look at them, their demographics and then their interests, education, they have the average of most Ghanaians. Junior high school, senior high school, polytechnic. Many Ghanaians have that profile. Many Ghanaians have that. A majority of Ghanaians have that, which means that they expect something, and sometimes, even though they nuance it, they also look at the hard facts of what they can get if it's not going well. And then another statistic which was interesting to me, if I add up, about 65% are into the trades, they are into artisanship, and they are into agriculture, which means they are self-employed, essentially. Am I correct, Doc?
Yeah, I think the employment status to the statistics are given.
Yes. So if you look at that slide, you can see agriculture, farming, fishing, forestry, 25%. Retail, shop, trader, hawker, vendor, 25%.
Yeah.
And then skilled manual worker, electrician, mechanic, machinist, 15%. Right? So what that tells me is that if you deepen opportunities in this area, if you enhance technical schooling by way of TVET, and you improve apprenticeship, recognize it formally, and then you invest some resources in standardization, contracting, as well as delivery for the artisanal group, the agricultural group, and all that, you will actually be making major headway in bringing up a society that's self-sufficient and self-confident. Now, having said that, it takes me to the survey findings. And it is that same group that are susceptible to the kind of repeated perceptional situation we have, heightened by openness and social media. That is what we may just write off as propaganda. it's a bit more nuanced than that. Okujetu was trying to say that certain incidents have happened and therefore they are not propaganda. Yes, an incident has happened, but the way you treat it in the media, the way you refer to it, the way you talk about it can make it into a propaganda piece. He mentioned PDS, for example. PDS had a timeline, and the government was under pressure from the MCC to complete what the MCC itself and the Mahama government had signed on to but hadn't delivered. When Nana came, the qualitative measure he put to the PDS deal, the concession, was to insist that a majority be made out to Ghanaians. Nana didn't select the same Ghanaians. That's propaganda. He did, which was good for Ghana, was that he said the majority shareholding should be Ghanaian if this major public asset is going to be concession.
And what happened to that? What happened to that? That's the crux of the matter.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm coming to the second level. I'll be very quick. And then when PDS went wrong, it was Nana who cancelled it. Nana cancelled PDS, not the NDC, not civil society. It was Nana who cancelled PDS, hot afternoon, out of the blue.
Are you suggesting he had an option?
No, yeah, I'm coming. After that, there was 2 different investigations, Samson. 2 different investigations, one by the government of Ghana and one by the consultants brought on by the MCC itself. Something. The MCC said there was nothing wrong and we should continue. And Nana insisted, the report from the government of Ghana insisted that there was fraud and it should be terminated. Am I correct, Samson? So you realize that if you spin PDS, you achieve propaganda. But if you look at the facts,
should the citizens have an expectation of a certain outcome after the termination of the contract, even though they know that they have lost a lot of money that would have come to improve our electricity system?
Yes. So I'm landing on PDS. It's just an example. Now, as we speak, PDS is in court with the government. PDS has sued the government. So a court is untangling the rights and privilege. But if the power of that
your line is getting bad. Your line is getting bad. But the curious question is, if you have found people to have engaged in fraud, should you be telling citizens that they have sued you, and because of that your hands are tied, you are unable to recover the monies you say you want to recover from them, or to exact the sanctions that they are supposed to, they deserve?
Something. That's also a court process. Either way, it's a court process. It's not about sitting them down.
So what is in court? What exactly is in court? What exactly is in court? There's little or nothing really has been heard about that. What exactly is in court?
Yes, the entire PDS matter is in court. We have not announced that it is in court. Perhaps this is not the forum for detailing what is in court. But I'm giving you an example of what is being labeled as propaganda. And I'm saying that we as an incumbent are susceptible to spin. When you spin a factual situation, which every political party is entitled to do, we have done it in opposition, then you can get the citizenry taken in a certain way.
You have just said that this fact that you've mentioned, that PDS is in court, has not been in the public. So how do you blame a member of the public who takes a view that you are superintending over corruption, and that the things you are expected to do to fight corruption, you are not doing them? After you have done investigations and found that someone has acted corruptly, fraudulently, and because of that, we have lost millions of dollars that should have come to the country. And you also accuse them of having taken over the electricity company property, having, taking monies within the period, so much money. And you are not saying that, you have sued them to recover the money, or that they have sued you and you have put a counterclaim to recover the money.
Are you contributing or you're asking a question? That is why I am saying something, that perhaps it is a failure on our part and an opportunity for spin. And therefore, we shouldn't just dismiss it as propaganda. That is why I have examined the psyche and profile of the Ghanaian who was interviewed. And that is why I'm saying that Ghanaian, if one spins hard enough, facts can turn into something else.
How do you admit on one hand that you have failed in communicating these aspects to the public, and yet you say that somebody is spinning for telling the story and demanding that you have not done what you are required to do?
Samson, spin is spin. You can't tell me that I cannot say that I have not communicated. It's not everything that can be communicated.
You say somebody has acted fraudulently. You say to me. No, you say
to me. You called me as a panelist. Let me also land.
I know how this works. Just hold on 1 minute. You say that somebody has acted fraudulently, and you don't tell the public whose monies they have acted fraudulently over. That you have taken this step to recover the money, and the public tells the CDD that you are not fighting corruption. You say blame the NDC for that.
I am not saying blame the NDC. You are not letting me speak to the issue. How can I? You are concluding before I've spoken. You are concluding before I've spoken. Something. Let me speak, please. I am saying that it is the duty of the incumbent to engage to the best of his ability. Sometimes the incumbent's hands are a bit tired. However, in that process, in the modern environment of openness, we are very open, coupled with the speed of social media, all manner of slants can be put on facts. They are entitled to spin. I've not said they can't spin, and I'm not blaming them for spinning. They are entitled to spin. If I were in their shoes, I probably would spin more. They are entitled to spin. So I'm saying that, yes, some of the events that are being slanted as outright corruption conclusively in public may not be the case. But for every story, the telling matters. And in this society we have now, where we have so much openness, you can tell the story in ways that our population of voters will accept that and believe. And sometimes,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's accept that. Let's accept that. Yes, as an incumbent government, we have a duty to tell the facts as it is and to act as we can to the best of our ability in resolving issues.
Again, you are saying or suggesting that it takes spin for the ordinary Ghanaian to express the basic intelligence that the Australian visa matter that he mentioned, that's one of the examples he gave, is a spin. That is a spin. How did that matter end? That a number of people who are not what they are found themselves through our sponsorship to Australia, and a matter comes up about it. And how do you remember that investigation to have concluded? And what do you want the public to say if they are asked?
Investigation is within the jurisdiction of the investigative agencies. And I'll go to my second level of how far we have come with Nanado in the seat. Corruption fighting is not a one-day event. Corruption fighting is not something you cut and you end. It's a process. We are adopting best practices. The Office of Special Prosecutor that we have set up seats agencies, the Auditor General, it seats the police, it seats Inoko, it seats STRAG, it seats FIC, it seats National Security, and what I'm saying is that there is plenty of opportunity in our society created by the Nanado administration through legal and institutional reforms to enable, to the extent that president to be the sole anti-corruption crusader and that sole status he has failed. It's not fair to the current practice worldwide of fighting corruption across multi-institutional spaces, including civil society, including the judiciary, including the media. So I am saying that if you go to the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act, the board, section 5, the board of that office.
Your line is...
Who can investigate it? So. And then beyond that, section 2 and 3, objects and functions of the board are to fight corruption. The Office of Special Prosecutor is to fight corruption. We have empowered civil society with rights to information. The government of Nanado, as far as fighting corruption is concerned, is pursuing international best practice to the best possible extent.
International best practice, look at it this way. International best practice will therefore include that even when Parliament comes up with a verdict that a minister within the government has broken the Constitution, he's violated the Constitution, he has breached all the laws concerning a procurement process, and there is a public outcry that the president ought to be firm and discipline that minister, he gives him a 2-week leave off. That's best practice?
No, I will explain that. The leave was a period when most of cabinet was on leave. It was not specific to him. It's important that sometimes some things come up and you say it was not specific to him. So let's not create the impression that he was giving leave to escape public opprobrium. Secondly, it has been explained that he was acting under circumstances that are of an emergency status. And the act he was acting under, the Public Financial Management Act and the regulations, allow exceptions in procedures where it is to do with safety and public health. It is in the law. It is in the law. The minister, if we test the minister's actions against that law, giving his stance to Parliament that I was acting in the middle of an emergency, and I believed at the time I was doing so that I needed to get this done, we can test it against the specific rules, and that is the Public Financial Management Act, which gives exemptions where, in the situation we have the Imposition of Restrictions Act to do with public safety and public health, there are exemptions in that law. So it is not always cut and dried. Something you have to have a case-by-case approach. It is not always cut and dried. So we need, that's why I'm saying that sometimes the way the story is told can impact us. And then if you are in government and you're not swift enough, and it would appear as if you're helpless.
Okay.
So in the matter of Ajima Menu, for example, we should be forthright on the provisions of the law that make his actions exceptional within the conditions of managing COVID as a public safety measure, as a public health measure, under the Imposition of Restrictions Act.
Your suggestion, therefore, is that Parliament, when the report that your own deputy majority leader signed, they should have done better than they did, because what you are saying here, they didn't say so. Let me go to Dr. Eric Odrosai. So thank you very much for your patience. What do you say, first of all, of such an exercise for a government, that has just come out of elections victorious, and we do something that seems to still test, it's the people's acceptance of that government when the government has already been endorsed in an election?
Thank you very much. And let me say good morning to our viewers and listeners, and good morning to Dr. Akwadwo Pumpuni and Odadie, Honorable Okujetu Ablapa.
Yeah, good morning.
Samson, I think it is a good exercise, and let me congratulate CDD, baselines are important for good governance, and research is important, especially when it is evidence-based. And I'm happy about the pre-election survey, and then this is a post-election survey. But Samson, as a researcher, the fundamentals of the research is critical because the conclusions or the outcome of the research should be generically applied to the entire Ghanaian population. Now, when you look at the survey sample, out of the sample, 49% from the regional representatives were the people who voted for the current government. 51% did not vote for the current government. So when you put expectation questions to them, you would expect the responses that would come. And the regions that voted from the research report, Ahafo, and the composition of Ahafo in the survey sample is 2%, Central 8%, Northeast 2%, Ashanti region 19.5%, Eastern region 10.5%, and Western region 7%. These are the regions that voted for the government, and this represents 49% of the sample survey. And again, Samson, the period within which the survey was conducted, I want to agree with Odadie Okujetua Blakwan. It should have been done in the first 2 months. But looking at it that the government has won election and it is transiting from a first term to a second term, and the fact that Section 23 of the Public Financial Management Act has already given them expenditure in advance of appropriation. So Parliament would tentatively or technically approve the current term's budget anytime after April. If the survey is conducted between May and June, it is in order. Because by which time the minister has read the first budget or economic policy statement of the next term, the budget is there. Citizens are well informed of what the government is going to do. Something I'm also happy about the gender parity. It is 50 for male and 50 for female, which makes the representative key. So I think that it is a good survey. The current government would just have to listen to what the people are saying, though majority of the respondents did not vote for them. It is food for thought. It should fit into the development of their policies, and going forward, they should know what Ghanaians are expecting, especially when majority of the respondents did not vote for you. Maybe if you listen to them and you do what they are calling you to do, and you act in ways that will please them, the voting pattern can change so that those who did not even vote for you in the 2020 elections can come to vote for you in 2024. So I congratulate CDB for that, and I think that we'll be able to make inroads if we listen to them. And finally, Samson, the literacy rate.
That point about the government should be listening. When you listen to Yabuamia Samwa, particularly for the very first submission that he made, don't you get the sense that on official, on official line, they are amenable, they are willing to listen? Doesn't it give you that sense?
No, it gives me that sense. And any government or any politician who would take such survey results lightly, that's so to his or her own disadvantage. Survey results, no matter how bad they are indicators and they are input to policy formulation as far as governance is concerned. And most especially, Samson, when 87% of the survey respondents were literate. So these are people who know what they are about. 87% of them were people who have gone through either primary school or had university education, so they can read in between the lines. And most importantly, 61% of them are employed, 39% of them are unemployed. So you realize that the composition is so rich that whatever verdict they return, we should just listen to it. The ones that we can use to inform public policy, it should inform public policy. And then let us make sure that we use it as a baseline and court the remaining 51% who did not vote for the government but responded under this survey to come to agree with the government and also increase the government vote going into 2024. So I think they are amenable.
You are going to your final point.
Yes, Samson, my final point is that in surveys like this, we have to be very careful about the questions we asked. Because if you ask of people's expectations, the expectations are clear. because they have voted for the government. The government is in power. After that, what next? So I think in future, maybe CDD may have to look at the survey composition as against the regions that voted for the government, so that if they can have it 50-50, it would help. But in a situation where 51% of the survey respondents did not vote for the government, if you were not to get a listening government, they will conclude that, well, majority of them did not vote for us, so what they are saying is not the best. But again, I would advise the government that it will be an error on their part if they fail to listen to what the people are saying.
As a watcher of how the parliament has been conducting itself over this period, what do you say about what people think about the parliament? They appear to have very high expectations. For example, 80% say that the current parliament will, quote, keep the executive in check, unquote, and improve practice of parliamentary democracy. 61% say it will slow down decision-making and make the MPs connive more on issues that affect them. That is 60% are saying so. Then you come a little further. They say that majority of Ghanaians have positive views on the election of an opposition member as Speaker of Parliament. Many respondents believe it will make the president and government more transparent. That's 77%. That's a whopping 77%. And also promote NPP-NDC cooperation and collaboration. However, about half, 52%, do not think it will make any difference. Please note that. Do not think it will make any difference. And finally, significant minorities were seen to lack knowledge on what transpired on some other issues. But so these two, what they say about Parliament, do they have too much expectations?
Samson, not at all. They are not having too much expectations. It is a normal expectation that good citizens of any country should have from their parliament. Because especially when we have an almost hung parliament in the Republic, we should expect more. And the role of parliament is to put a check on the executive. And parliament is a microcosm of the people in the country. So if citizens are expecting parliament to put a check on the executive, it's in order. And whether or not they are doing it is another matter. But you see that significant majority have higher expectation that parliament will do it. And I think by and large, they have lived up to expectation. We hope that they will continue to keep the executive in check. And I also think that the executive has also played its side of the game by making sure that they dance to the tune as far as parliament is concerned. Having an opposition person chairing parliament is one of the best things that should ever happen to us in our democracy. Because if we have checks and balances situation where a public accounts committee of parliament is chaired by the opposition person and it is working so well, why can't we have a parliament chaired by an opposition person? And though the speaker is coming from the opposition side, from up to the way he has conducted himself, it does not suggest to me that he will play the opposition card. He's been fair, he's been firm, he's been open-minded. And that is what citizens have expressed. So I give them thumbs up for that.
Right. Yao, let me come to you before I come to Okudzeto and then Dr. Akudze Asante. What do you think? You are no more in Parliament, but do you see that Parliament is living out the expectations of the people?
I think the people have put Parliament to the test. If you realize how confident they were in voting for the president and the gap between the president and the members of Parliament, there's a certain desire on the part of the people to see Parliament perform in ways that are, to their minds, better than before. I'll use Central Region as an example. The president won in 19 constituencies, but we had only 10 seats. So clearly, the people are expressing their belief, their frustrations on an MP in terms of the MP's real role, local role, expectations at local level. Were you able to facilitate? Were you able to empower at local level? Were you able to lead development? Then Do they have a real impression of what you're supposed to do in Parliament? Legislate and scrutinize, oversee the executive? It's very clear that the people want to see more. So the assumption is that when you bring these two forces in alignment, perhaps they will have to fight harder to prove their point. And that a majority in Parliament with the presidency creates this impression of a rubber stamp that is a favorite phrase of ours. Now, clearly with this Parliament, you can't just jump up and say it's a rubber stamp, because the energies in there will demonstrate that whatever goes through the impasse, through the scrutiny. Now, the election of Backbend is very significant. It is a conjunction of history and perhaps faith. God has been kind to us, something, if I may say so. Because if perhaps it had been anybody else but Backbend, we would have been in trouble. I mean, this is a man of fantastic experience who throughout his career has demonstrated objectivity, including standing up against his own party line when necessary. When necessary. This is a man who has demonstrated beyond Parliament a certain public integrity for the principle, beyond his party, beyond partisanship. And it happens that at this juncture, when the people of Ghana want a parliament that is more proactive in terms of overseeing the legislature. You saw that statistic about scrutiny of foreign loans. Though it's an expectation, it was a deliberately put question. It reflects the need of the people. That yes, they expect better from Parliament, loans will be better scrutinized. But we happen to have Backbend at this juncture, a man of proven integrity, a man who is of the NDC but has demonstrated over the years that he can be non-partisan to steer this Parliament through this very delicate time.
Right.
And so I'm confident that we will see something out of this Parliament.
All right. Now, Sami, you have borne the brunt of your supporters, your members, during the vetting processes. I believe that they will belong to the 50-something plus that say, forget it, whatever is there, it won't bring us any benefit. What do you say?
Something. First of all, those of us in Parliament must admit that this finding imposes on us higher obligation, that the Ghanaian people would not take business as usual any longer, that they expect this uncharted waters we are in, this hung Parliament, to deliver the democratic dividend. If you look at other expectations they have, they are saying that they expect these numbers to even ensure better attendance in Parliament. They expect the numbers to improve parliamentary democracy. They expect the numbers to keep the executive in check, to aid security of international contracts. So we must be paying attention to all these expectations, and we must deliver on them. Even as they express this high optimism, they are not oblivious of possible challenges. There are some significant numbers who are saying, about 61%, who are saying that this could slow down decision making. So we must make sure that when it comes to matters that are in the national interest, we do not use the numbers to unnecessarily, disrupt. We should not stampede. We should act in the national interest. 60% says that if care is not taken, MPs may connive on issues that affect them. So
personal interest,
elite interest against the interests of the masses. And then 57% say that it could disrupt the MPP's government's business and agenda. So you can see that the Ghanaian voter is increasingly getting more sophisticated, more nuanced, and very, very, very intelligent. So we must ensure that in Parliament, we do not let the people down. And these numbers must count for something. The hung Parliament must count for something. And I hope that we will all, as 275 members of parliament, and the speaker, there is such high expectation for the speaker as well. 77% are saying that it's a good development and that they expect him to assist us to make sure that this democracy works and delivers the hopes and aspirations of the people.
Right. It must be said, however, that some of the people, when you listen generally, have actually singled out some of the MPs, particularly opposition MPs, and thankfully you are included, that they trust that so far from what they have seen, you are doing what they expect of you. For example, you have been very consistent on one of the issues we are coming to discuss now about how that is bleeding the public purse. It is wasteful. It is not prudent thing to do for us to have a presidential jet, and yet the president will not use it. And excuses you say are lame, are giving, and so much is spent on luxury jets, so you say. Yes,
it's humbling to note.
We'll Santi, I realized first that you wanted to give some reactions.
Yes, because Dr. Sai raised the question about the sample and suggesting that maybe we should have looked at a sample that takes into account regions that the president won. First of all, that would not be proper because this is a post-election survey. Elections are over. A government has been installed. The government is operating for all Ghanaians. And the questions we are asking are about government policy, the commitments that the government that has been installed has made during the election that it's going to implement. So it is not only for those who voted for the president. This is going to be something that impacts everybody. So the sample has to be a national representative sample. But the second point is that regions don't vote. There are human beings that vote in the region. And even if you take, some of the regions that the president won, Bono or Northeast and so on and so forth, it's 51, 40, whatever. So even if you're taking the voting population and distributing it statistically, it will still be, in the Northeast, there will be a smaller amount of voters that you use because you're talking about the universe of voters. You will get more in Ashanti, you get more in Greater Accra than you get in Northeast. So I think that we have to, move away from that because the suggestion is that if you have people who voted for the president, maybe they will have a better appreciation of that. But this is a sample that you can clearly see Ashanti and all the places that the president won are still very strong. The numbers are more there because in the larger population, that is what is reflected. And yet you are still getting these results. So actually, it should be a real indicator for government to take it seriously. That if you have a sample that even has a lot of citizens who voted for you in the election and they are still saying these things, then you should take it seriously.
Okay.
So I don't think that in terms of the methodology, there's any problem with it with what we have used for this survey.
All right. Now, maybe a final question to you, very substantive. I find that the people have certain concerns. They have certain concerns, very germane concerns, you may say. So, for example, you had where they said they speak about unemployment issues, then they come to talk about the issue of the Ghanaians are split in their confidence in government's ability to consolidate the gains made in the planting, rearing for food and jobs program in the next 4 years, but a majority, 61, express lack of confidence in the government's ability to expand the $1 million per constituency initiative. We spoke about the corruption issues, where you had you had 53% saying that they didn't have confidence in the ability of the government to protect the public purse, curb corruption, and official impunity, 62%.
Yes.
When you compare that to Afrobarometer 2019, where you had come to the conclusion that corruption was being normalized, what should be done to address this? Solutions, what should be done?
So I think for me in the short term, it is there's two, almost like we are pursuing a parallel reality. So government's response when these matters have been raised, and we've had a lot of engagement, even just recently, civil society went to see the president, is to say we have invested in institutions. We've set up these structures. We have passed these legislation. That is true. The other reality is that corruption, we are not curbing corruption. And in many ways, it has become normalized. Now, we have to find a way where we meet, where we accept that in spite of the investment that we are making, we are not making gains. So, what is the problem? Is it that Mr. Bobia Samoa talks about time, right? I look at the data from 2017 or even 2014, and I realize that we have a problem. We seem to have stagnated. So I don't think it's a question of time. The indices of progress has to be seen. It has to be palpable. It has to be felt. So there has to be an acceptance that whatever investment we are making, it is not making the gains. But what is the problem? Is it that the money is not going to the right places, or the strategy is wrong? If we can come to that acceptance, then we can move forward. At the moment, we are on this side. Those of us in civil society on one side, government is on this side, and we keep talking about the problem instead of dealing with it. So I think that for me, that is one thing that has to be, in terms of the narrative and government's own approach, that it has to happen. The second thing I think is a signaling from the president. That it seems that, in many cases that you have mentioned, what the expectation of the public is, we don't get it. And that signaling has huge effect on the public service and political appointees generally. When you have taken a certain action against somebody else down the line knows that if it's happened to Mr. A, then it can happen to me, and therefore I have to discipline myself. If those two things can happen, I think we can begin to turn the corner. But I really think that the interrogation we have to have.
So the thrust of this is, and I noted a certain preamble to one other question, and a minute if you can give me some response. There are issues with poor economic management, manifested in huge borrowing for shoddy, inflated projects, leaving a crippling debt against what the Constitution commands in Article 36. The Constitution commands sound and healthy economy, quote unquote. So over the period, the politicians are failing us. To avoid waste of scarce resources, the Constitution commands the commonsensical duty to continue predecessor projects. Our Fourth Republican history is replete with the criminal waste in the abandonment of projects to rot as successor regimes start new ones for the obvious procurement corruption that you keep talking about, procurement corruption, leaving us in a cycle of impoverishment. I note lastly that the Constitution commands, quote, take steps to eradicate corrupt practices and abuse of power, unquote. You see in the report, people have issues with impunity, abuse of power. But the Afrobarometer 2019 confirms the dreaded normalization of corruption and official impunity, rape of the public purse, and the lack of good governance. Question is, if this democracy, our system, doesn't seem to deliver the expected benefits, at least fix the country. And now there's a very latest one, national interest movement, which are seeking a new and or overhauled constitution. Should that be the focused option? Because that's what they feel. The system is not just delivering the benefit. You just said so. Is a new constitution the way to go?
I think there's going to be a lot of debate as to what a new constitution, what I have come to experience in the last 16 years I've been doing this work, is that laws are not enough. So you can have a whole process to change the constitution, but the individual that is going to enforce those rules has to come with a set of values. And somebody needs to be able to monitor that person. If the person doesn't have those values, hold them accountable, so that there is an expectation within the system that, yes, you have to go with integrity. But even if you don't have integrity, the system will hold you to check. We don't have that. And the biggest example is the Auditor General's report, which annually we get. And you ask yourself, the public financial management law is one of the most stringent laws that we have. Nobody, you don't hear anybody even get suspended for breaching rules, cash irregularities, stores management, whatever. So that it sends a signal that somebody else can't do it. When Dom Levo was doing the surcharging, you could see the difference. Yeah. So for me, those are the steps that it is still within government's remit and power.
But if Dom Levo, as you insist, it does not have the sufficient constitutional protection, is it not a constitutional architecture that checks that? If you have a president, you have said, Kwesi Prempeh, Professor Raymond Atogba, you say that we are operating an imperial presidency. The president does almost everything. Appoints in excess of 6,000 board members and CEOs and all of that.
So
if you have a new approach where you clip his wings over all of these matters, wouldn't it work?
As we wait for that, because for me, corruption is an existential threat. All the agitations that you're talking about, I don't know how long we have before it gets serious. So for me, there are things that can be done. I remember we wrote to the finance minister, because the finance minister has surcharge powers even under the Public Financial Management Act. And I expect that when these reports come, there should be clear directives, whether it is on cash regularities, on stores or whatever, and sanctions applied, so that the system knows that there are certain behaviors that's not allowed. What I know is that the Finance Ministry does not have a unit that is there to enforce the Financial Management Act. And I think that it should have a unit. So there are things, as I said, that is within the executive's remit, that if the president is signaling and some of these institutional actions are taking, it will sanitize the system. Whilst we have a big debate about,
and you are hoping that this doesn't get worse. I heard that one.
Yes,
guys, I'm taking just a minute's comment from each one of you. Then we take a break. I'm taking just a minute. Then we take a break. Now, Sammy, what do you say in the face of the frustrations of at least these two groupings? Asking for a constitution, is that the way to go?
I support the demand for a new constitution. I have my copy here. I go everywhere with it. The report of the Constitution Review Commission, 960 pages. They did such a phenomenal job. Excellent job. I haven't heard anybody criticize.
It's totally 1,000.
The work they did. There is a Constitution Implementation Committee report available. All we have to do is move to the next step. I think that we all have to support the demand for a new constitution, because having served in the executive, having served in the legislature, it's clear to me that you really have constitutional bottlenecks that allows for persons who have low integrity deficit to exploit. And I agree also with Dr. Asante that we need to take a second look at who we are electing, who we are giving our public resources to. All those who are agitating out there, I will encourage a lot of them to also take interest in coming into the space. Don't stay outside and allow others with low integrity threshold to come. They will exploit the constitution. But finally, I am glad that the majority of respondents that CDD spoke to, 67% of them say they will vote against the political party of erring political officials.
Okay, thank you.
So let us all beware.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Odrosai, 1 minute. What do you say? Those calling for a new constitution out of all these frustrations and lack of actions, is that one option to look at?
Definitely, Samson, is one option, because when you look at the CRC report, I mean, a report that recommends an amendment of more than 50% of the current constitution technically requires that we have to draft a new constitution. So the challenge is, where do we go from here? Because this current constitution is really not a development constitution. It's a stability constitution that was supposed to help us transit from a previously military regime to stabilize constitutionally. But if we want to develop, we need a new constitution.
I didn't expect that from you as a student of the constitution yourself. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, Bwamia Samoa, 1 minute. What do you say?
I don't believe the entire constitution should be jettisoned and rewritten. I think we must go step by step. I think there are 4 critical areas we must deal with. One is the local governance situation, where I say that the development, the democracy loop is incomplete at local level. So we must elect DCEs and MCs on partisan basis. Article 55, 243 must go. I think we must deal with Article 71. Every 4 years, it tears this country apart, literally. And we must do something about it. I think we must do something about 72, which ties the executive's hands into Parliament in this hybrid system, which is supposed to oversee and check itself. It's a bit tough on the players that you play in 2 rooms. In one room, you are expected to deliver. In the other room, you are expected to oversee your self-delivery. The hybrid may be a bit problematic. Okay. I think we need to look at how we get the best out of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I like the way you went specific aspect you want to be done with. We'll take a break here. When we return, we'll start with Dr. Odrosai straight to check what is going wrong with the MMDCEs and if the president has been breaking any law in this regard.
What do you really mean by a national policy on presidential travels? If you're talking of maybe president using the official aircraft for some other things not related to his work as a president of the nation. For example, if, for example, the president has been invited to, say, United Kingdom to get to London, and maybe he has to do something private in, say, Germany or Belgium, and decides to travel to those areas using the aircraft. Well, in some countries, I mean, what they do, I can give you US as a typical example, that any travel not related to the president's official duties, travels relating to his for his own private purposes, the president will have to pay for the cost of that travel. In other words, the state will calculate how much is involved traveling from the official function to the private function, and then the president will have to reimburse the state for the cost of that travel. I think this happens I know, for example, in the US, they do that. The president uses what they call the Air Force One for official duties, but the president at the same time can use it for maybe rallies and things of that. They have a policy where if the president uses the Air Force One, which is solely for the use of the president for his official functions, but which also enables him to use it for private travel, then you have to pay the state for the cost of the private use.
The president is not a caretaker president, and President Nana Addo Dankwa needs to appreciate that he is to govern in accordance with law and with respect to the letter and spirit of the 1992 Constitution, and not to govern as he pleases. It appears to me that he's taking the Ghanaian people for granted, if not a matter of sleeping and dozing off on the job. Is inappropriate, legally inappropriate, for persons whose constitutional mandate have lapsed to be asked to act in acting position. That is repugnant to the Constitution and repugnant to the laws of Ghana. Imagine that you don't have district chief executive, metropolitan municipal chief executive in place. What happens to the management of conflict? If there are major conflicts in those areas, the district security councils, which is an establishment of law, will have to be chaired by them. Managing those conflicts can be worrying and can even escalate.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. So what we will do here is to bring in Professor Odrosai, Dr. Odrosai, who is your foremost expert as far as this panel is concerned on this subject matter, to give us his views, and then I'll get my guests, maybe just say a minute's commentary around it, and then we'll move to the next subject of the presidential jet. So, Prof. Dr. Odrosai, is the president doing anything wrong in this regard?
Thank you very much. Technically and under law, I do not see anything wrong with what the president is doing, except that by way of governance, it has delayed unduly. Because what it then means is that his second term is not felt on the ground. When you look at Article 243, the chief executive is the chief representative of the central government. Many people have interpreted it to mean that chief executives represent the president. Chief executives do not represent the president. 243 is clear that they are chief representative of the central government. And as far as we have an executive presidency under the Constitution, when the president is elected, he's allowed to appoint caretaker ministers for the ministries. When a chief executive office becomes vacant, the president allows the regional minister to act within a period. So I think that it has delayed unduly, but legally, it will be extremely difficult for anybody to hold the president to say that the president has breached one rule or the other. As far as the functionality and then operations of the assemblies are concerned, I think it is good for people to understand that chief executives do not sign checks. All assemblies at the moment have their 2021 action plans in place. The development plans are in place. They are implementing up to December. It has already been approved. All assemblies have their composite budget. It is in place. The various district assemblies are functioning. The executive committees of the assemblies, which the chief executive chairs, are also functioning, except that it has a caveat that the executive committees cannot take certain policy decisions. And that is where maybe I would say that people can force the president, because policy decisions are not being taken by executive committee, and that would affect the system. But otherwise, technical operations of the assemblies are ongoing. And like the issue that the Honorable Minority Leader mentioned, the dissect and the music, their operations are intact, except that, again, the chief executive who chairs the dissect and music are limited as far as policy decision-making are concerned. But even when you look at the national security architecture, it is also so decentralized that when there are issues of conflict, the national security minister and the other decentralized institutions will be able to deal with it. That notwithstanding, I think we should speed up the process of having these MMDCEs confirmed. Legally, it will be extremely difficult for anybody to hold the president to have breached any rule in this country.
So the MMDCs are supposed to be elected, or as it were, chosen and then confirmed for a 4-year tenure, not so?
That is so.
unlike those who serve in accordance with who are affected by the Presidential Transition Act, they are not captured in the Presidential Transition Act. Will you appreciate why the letters issued by the Chief of Staff to those that are affected by the Presidential Transition Act, Act 845, to act, was almost the same that went to the DCEs also to act?
Well, I do not think so, because if my memory serves me right, I think a separate directive went to the chief executive as far as the caretaker or acting positions are concerned. I do not think, I stand to be corrected though, that the generic directive that came from the chief of staff also applies to the chief executive, because when it comes to the chief executive position, it is within the mandate of the president to decide that you continue to be in office or not. So I am really not on top of those issues, whether or not that generic statement applies to them. But what I know is that a statement or a directive went to the chief executive to continue to be in office until such a time that substantive chief executives are nominated and approved by the assembly. And this is not the first time. When Professor Mills won elections, Professor Mills directed that the then NPP chief executive to continue to be in office until such a time that he nominates his chief executive. And they were in office until such a time that he nominated his chief executive, and they were confirmed before the NPP chief executive left office. So I think we should allow for a smooth transition, except that we should not allow it to unduly delay.
So as far as you are concerned, 9 months or so, that's undue delay?
It may not be an undue delay, especially for a government that is transitioning into a second term. If it were to be a new government, I would have interpreted it to be an unduly delayed, being unduly delayed. But insofar as it is a government that is transiting into a second term, and also not all the chief executives have had their tenure ended. Not all of them have served the mandated 2 years required under the Constitution and the local government.
You mean two terms?
We should be able to segregate it.
Yeah, you meant to say 2 terms when you said 2 years. So very recently, we went to the Supreme Court in the matter of Theophilus Donko, and the Supreme Court said that, people's tenure, like those on the boards and CEOs and the rest of them, should be governed by their statutes. What the law says is what must happen to you. Or if the president wrote a letter to appoint you, the terms of what he wrote to say will apply to you accordingly, where the law does not specifically say that your office terminates. By Section 25 of the Local Government Act, Act 936, the term of office of a DCE is defined by the law as 4 years. 4 years. Unless terminated by the president before the 4 years. In this regard, won't you agree that the letter written from the presidency asking them to stay on but not do certain work is unlawful?
I see it as an acknowledgement that your first 4-year tenure has ended. However, in order to avoid a governance gap, hold on, be a caretaker for the government until such a time that a substantive person is appointed. And it even happens in administrative practice. You do not hand over to a substantive person until the person who is expected to take over comes to you and you do a very good handover. It facilitates a smooth transition. So I really do not see anything wrong with that. I think that it is to facilitate a smooth transition. However, if we allow it to exist unduly or to delay unduly, then it is going to create a governance.
So supposing that the president, it took him 1 year to make up his mind to appoint new MMDCEs, they will be serving for 4 years?
That would have been unduly delayed. 1 year is you cannot allow them to act for 1 year.
Yeah, we have done almost 9 months now. So this is my question. The law says you appoint them to serve 4 years, and they are entitled to serve another 4 years. If the president appointed a DCE today, would they be serving 4 years?
They will be serving 4 years. That is what the law says, whether the president is in office or not, unless the 4-year tenure is terminated by whichever president in power.
Do you see a problem with such an interpretation? If it happened that a new party won?
Yes, I see a problem with that because if a new party wins the election, some of the chief executive may not have exhausted their 4 years, but the incoming president can decide that, look, I will not allow you to continue. And it has happened on a number of occasions. We have instances where a chief executive will start a first 4-year tenure in the middle of an administration, going into an election, that government will lose elections, a new government comes, and automatically they are sacked. So it happens. So I think going forward, we have to take a second look at our law. And the solution, something, would be to have these MMDCEs elected. If we were to elect chief executives, we wouldn't have found ourselves where we are debating and talking about unduly delays in appointment of chief executive.
Okay. As we know now, none of the DCEs have done 4 years yet, correct?
Most of them have done 4 years.
Most of them have? Okay.
Yes, most of them have.
Okay. There were new districts that were created.
That is so, in 2018.
So don't you see the law is being abused here? Don't you see it?
Something. It is one thing having the law and the other thing abusing. Laws gives advantages and disadvantages. So it is up to Parliament, and I'm happy Odadie, Honorable Okujeto is there to look in between or in the law and then try to seal these loopholes. Because the Local Governance Act, as it is, gives a lot of opportunity to an incumbent government to try to manage the system as they want it to be. So I think that we should take a second look at it.
Okay.
Local governance.
All right. So I meant it just a minute from all of you so we can deal with the next issue. Dr. Hujasante, there cannot be an acting president. That's why even when the president travels, there must be somebody who takes over, and that's the work of the president. Is that not the same principle that the DC is supposed to act there? So can they be an acting position?
So I think this whole appointment process of MMDCs has run its course. I mean, you could see the complications, and I mean, a president is spending how many months of his time having, vetting. There are all kinds of issues. So I really think that if there's any evidence that we really have come to the end point of this process, it is now. Almost 1,300 people applying, all those things. But I don't know whether it will solve the tenure problem. Because even in elections, if it's contested and the court processes take long or whatever, in Nigeria, that's the problem you have. So you have some people running their term, a year after others. So you have to conduct elections at different points, and it's quite a mess. So I think that the question you raised about the tenure issue, we have to address it. We have to look at it carefully. Because if we don't take care, you are going to have similar problems even when you elect DCEs.
Okay. Yes, what do you say?
Well, I mean, on these matters, we all defer to Senior Odadie Odrosai. But I think that we have a very golden opportunity in the action that my good brother and colleague in Parliament, the Honorable Roxin Dafiamekpo, has initiated at the Supreme Court. I think that the Supreme Court will have to pronounce on these matters because it's getting murkier and murkier. As you have rightly pointed out, if the president eventually makes his appointments probably in October or November, is he then tying the hands of his successor, the new government, if the DCs insist that they must serve the 4-year term?
Even though the president still can, that their term can still be terminated by a president. It doesn't matter that the president who appointed them. You understand? So
but it's
politically,
Are there not DCEs who suffered that termination and won their cases in court?
Yeah,
that you can't terminate them.
There are a few instances.
The law says do it this way.
Yes.
Why are we finding
and
the
some of them were
opportunity to
compensated? You know,
why are we finding the opportunity
at the taxpayers' expense? It's really murky, and I want to renew the call for the election of DCs. I agree with Dr. Pumpuni Asante.
Okay.
I think that the only thorny issue was, should it be partisan or not? And I think that we should have engaged further.
Yeah.
The approach the president adopted, okay, if you can't go partisan with me, then
I
throw the baby away with the bad water.
So
let's engage now. Yeah. I get the sense, and maybe you may want to do another survey on that. The majority of Ghanaians really want.
We did a survey. The survey also included findings on local government.
Before that, the people told the
and they don't want it to be partisan.
Constitution Review Commission that they wanted it to be elective.
To be elected, but not partisan.
Partisan, all right.
So I think we should just give the people what they want.
Yes, let's go to IB. What do you say? This DCE matters. I have seen that there's even a group that has come out of the MPP expressing a lot of frustration about the situation. They are so unhappy about it. Please unmute. Unmute.
Okay. Something.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
I love this democracy, something. It's dynamic and it's unfolding very, very fast. The biggest part of it is activist civil society who are in a position to put these views across effectively. I appreciate the problems the president is having. After a first term, trying to deliver the right people into the right slots across the country. It's a burden that should be taken away from him. We must vote. Now we then come to whether the NDC and the MPP agree. And I like when Okujetu says that we should have consulted. In the midst of a referendum, we had launched together. and in Parliament, when the NDC advised that we should go tackle 55 first. The bottom line is that the conversation must be had. And I am an avowed believer in partisanship because it is ideology and choice. If a local person can elect their MP and their president, why can't they elect their mayor? What is so dangerous about electing the one you live with? And you can elect the one you are sending away and the one at the top by choice. Let us give choice throughout. It will build this democracy. And it will be inclusive because every party will have a stake in every government. Like all mature democracies, your strongholds will keep voting for you at local level. So every party will have a stake in the government at any time. Instead of this kamikaze approach where once we vote, the opposition party is all out immediately after the vote to kill the sitting government. Every party will have a stake in the policies of the government because once you are in government, your policies spread across the local government areas. And if the local government area is in the control of another party, you have to engage that party to ensure that policies fly. So I am for changing Article 55 and 240, and I'm for voting for MCs and DCs on partisan lines.
All right. Thank you very much, Yabuamia Samuel. The question has been asked why the president was not interested in the way the Constitution Review Commission proposed it, that other countries, they do it, they vote for them, but not on partisan lines. Why can't we also do that? We'll take a break. We'll return to ask questions, and I'm receiving messages, some saying, let's just sell the presidential jet because after all, we don't need it. We can hire some. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Globe Productions, in partnership with Joy Entertainment and Graphic News, presents Something Must Kill a Man. Well, if you haven't watched it, you should. It showed on Thursday, Friday, and it's showing today. A play by Lateef Abubakar is coming on today again at 7 p.m. at Labadi Beach Hotel. It is open air theater, so you are safe. No COVID-19 issues. So go to Joy, come to the front desk, or find all the places where the tickets have been announced to pick one. It's only 8 Ghana cedis. Go and enjoy after COVID has kept us in the room for so long. Now, the president traveled again, and the man who has been monitoring his travels issued yet another epistle saying that he is going to saddle us with yet another budget. A cumulative 3.46 million Ghana cedis. How did he come by that? And he gives us another another run that suggests that this one may even be more luxurious than the previous one, and there can be no excuse for not using the presidential jet that we have. Yes, let me explain.
Yes, Samson, I'm glad that we are having this discussion right after the CDD survey, which puts in perspective the expectations of Ghanaians on public office holders to protect the public purse. Indeed, this president himself pledged to protect the public purse, and is one of the reasons why he was voted for in the 2016 elections. And it is sad to say that agreeing with 53% of Ghanaians who have lost confidence in the president to protect the public purse, the president appears now to be on a journey of no return. This his newfound taste for luxury jets is costing this country greatly. I can confirm something, that when the president traveled to the United Kingdom on the 27th of July 2021 for the Global Education Summit, and when he traveled to Germany last week on the invitation of Chancellor Angela Merkel, the president again abandoned the presidential jet, which this country purchased at a whopping $37,150,000 United States dollars. The presidential jet we have did not come cheap. And indeed, if you follow aviation journals analyzing presidential jets in Africa, our presidential jet is always rated amongst the top 5. It is a really comfortable presidential jet. Remember, it was spruced up recently in 2017, reconfigured, and made even more comfortable for our president to use. And we all want our president to be comfortable and to be safe. So there is absolutely no justification for the president refusing blatantly to use the presidential jet. This time, the president chartered from the Global Jet Luxembourg company a Boeing 737-900ER BBJ-3. It is registered LXDIO. The manufacturer serial number is MSN 62515 with a line number 5659. It has a hex code 4D0213, configured VIP. It has 2 CFMI engines, and it was delivered to the current operators, that is the Global Jet of Luxembourg, in November 2015. It is a 19-seater luxury jet, and its manufacturers boast of having some of the finest luxury features you can find in the world. It comes with multiple sections, guaranteed with a VIP lounge for relaxation, 5-star dining facilities, a royal master bedroom, cinema room for watching movies, in addition to other in-flight entertainment systems. And of course, if I will pay royalties to the Defense Minister Nitiwo, it also comes with royal bathroom or shower facilities. Now, it costs the Ghanaian taxpayer, and viewers and listeners can check from the Global Jet Luxembourg website. I have run my checks. The minimum you will pay for this jet is $14,000 an hour, the minimum, if you deal directly with them. But if you come through a broker or a middleman, you can pay between $18,000 and $22,000 per hour. So the estimates that I have done, I went very conservative. I used the minimum, $14,000, even though I know that our government has a penchant of dealing with middlemen, sometimes dubious middlemen and shonky sheikhs. But
so how does this compare with the first instance?
So the first instance, he went for £15,000 an hour. That was slightly more expensive. That is the ACJ 320 Neo. That's slightly more expensive because that was indeed he was among the first clientele because that is new. This jet was delivered in 2015. The ACJ 320 Neo was manufactured and delivered less than 2 years ago, and in terms of its luxury features, it probably had more leg room for luxury, except that this one now has a cinema room, which the other one didn't have. That is the more unique feature about this one. But I've been asking myself, really, for a 6.5-hour journey, I mean, to London, 7 hours to Germany, how much time do you have, to watch movies, to use the master bedroom, and all of that? Now, if you look at the total flying time, we have estimated 41 hours to the UK, to Germany, and then the 13 hours of pickup and drop-off time. You will then have to multiply that 41 hours by $14,000 United States dollars. That gives you $574,000. At today's exchange rate, it is 3.46 million Ghana cedis. That is how much we have lost for just these 2 trips. And you see, the irony is something is that the president is visiting 2 leaders who are celebrated globally for their simplicity and their modesty. He went to the UK. Boris Johnson is celebrated for his love for bicycles. He rides his bicycle to work with his backpack. He became famous for that when he was London mayor. Angela Merkel, one of the most modest leaders the world has ever seen, insists on staying in her apartment where she was as a young physicist. She has remained there. She gardens herself, she shops herself, goes to market herself. She is not one to use all these expensive female bags and shoes and bangles and all of that. That's why the Germans love her. They call her Mutti. She's celebrated for her modesty. And then our president, who is going to appeal to these people for assistance, he went to Germany to try to negotiate some more vaccines for us. Remember, the Germans already had said they would donate 70 million doses of AstraZeneca to Africa. So even if the president didn't go to Germany, we will have got the vaccines. But while he says that we got a few thousands more because he went there. Did you have to go with such a luxurious monster, which will make even Arabian kings envious?
Earlier, Nito had explained to us that the number that he needs to carry along, what you have cannot carry that.
Again, that argument doesn't cut it. It doesn't make any sense. Look, our presidential jet now has been reconfigured. With crew, it can take up to 17 people. Now, this LXDIO, the Boeing 737 that was chartered for this trip, takes 19 people. What's the difference really between 17 and 19? What is the substantial, the significant difference that the Ghanaian taxpayer should be saddled? And you see something, it will even outrage Ghanaians to find out that I decided to track what the presidential jet was up to whilst the president was on this luxury frolic.
Floric, you don't want to say that because at least we have secured vaccines coming.
Please.
So...
I mean, the luxurious component of this journey is what is unacceptable. Is totally
you have a suspicion that it was used for private purpose?
Look, the presidential jet was flown to France on the 19th of July, 2021, per my tracking. It departed Kotoka at 8 minutes past 6 a.m. and arrived in France at 14:30. It flew direct. Remember that when I put out the first article, the first expose on the ACJ 320 Neo, some MPP communicators said, oh, the aircraft cannot fly directly to France. On the 19th of July, it flew directly non-stop to France, which confirms what we have always said, that the Falcon can fly to Europe directly, non-stop. Now, I'm interested in who really took this aircraft to France, or probably was it for servicing? They should let us know. Now, whilst the president was in the UK, the presidential jet was also spotted flying to Lusaka and then to Kumasi. That confirms that the presidential jet is in good shape, is in pristine condition, and could have been used. I am totally outraged, Samson, that you have the president and his team unable to provide acceptable and convincing reasons after the first expose. As we speak, after several weeks of pussyfooting, rigmarole, finance minister asking for more time, he comes to Parliament to tell us that, look, go to national security. We were not convinced in Parliament that this is a national security issue, especially when the finance minister should know. If he checks the GIFME system, he has access to the GIFME system, he will know how much has been spent. He releases funds for this expenditure, and yet he claims not to know. We should go to National Security Minister. The National Security Minister is in possession of the question. I filed another question. The Speaker admitted it. I must commend the Speaker for his diligence. The National Security Minister appears to have been saved by the bell with the parliamentary break. And we are expecting that he will respond when we resume from the break. Now, the answer has not been provided. The dust has not settled on the first one, the ACJ 320. But gauging from the uproar, the anger of Ghanaians, saying that, look, you promise to protect the public purse. What you are doing, you are rather saddling us with more expenditure. Let us use these resources to look at school feeding caterers this whole week, agitating that they've not been paid for 7 months. Look at the considerable labor agitations, at the labor front. UTAC, Federation of Senior Staff Association, NAT and NAGRAT have all served notice. GMA has served notice. The frontline healthcare workers who are helping us fight COVID, the promises we made them have not been honored. We say that we should burden share. That is why the president, you told us during the May Day celebrations that you are even willing to suspend salary increase for you and your appointees. So let's all burden share. Is this burden sharing? This cannot be burden sharing. So the president really has shown the height of insensitivity and total disrespect and contempt for the Ghanaian people. When this first expose has not been addressed.
With considerable experience in managing a president, says he agrees with you if it is used for a private purpose, it must be paid for. As you have also said, is the practice elsewhere, even in America. But where he disagrees with you is where you say we should pass regulations or policy that dictates how presidential travels must be handled. Why is that? In 30 seconds, I need to move to the others to get their views.
It's from best practice. I have studied the presidential travel policies across the world, and they don't leave it to the discretion of a president. No president of the United States of America can decide that he won't use the presidential jet, he wants a more luxurious or something else. You are not allowed, because it even jeopardizes your security. Those who are saying that some of the arguments I'm making, I'm undermining the security of the president, it's not true. We are rather asking for more security. When you use your presidential jet, you are using your own pilot, your crew, whose allegiance you can trust, their loyalty is known. These commercial jets, they don't allow you to come with your pilot and your crew. You don't know where they owe allegiance. So it is not even safe for the president. So we need a presidential travel policy now because the abuse is just too much. And that presidential travel policy should dictate that presidential jet must be used. If you look at our history, all the times we've had presidential jet, when we had the first presidential jet in 1962, the DH-125, President Nkrumah stuck to it, he used it. When Achampong bought the Fokker 28 in 1976, he stuck to it, he used it. When Rawlings bought the Gulfstream GIII, President Rawlings stuck to it and used it. When the Falcon arrived in 2010, President Mills used it, President Mahama used it. This business of abandoning the presidential jet is so new and is so offensive. And the president must stop. Look, the world over, even in the United States where they have the presidential travel policy, they still go further to ensure that refunds are made. You know, in the United States, if you are on Air Force One and you have mixed functions, you do a detour and attend to private business. You are asked to reinvest. Political campaign,
okay.
Political fundraisers or graduation.
For it.
You pay the state for it.
Thank you.
And I have letters here from
all right, thank you.
From congressmen and congresswomen.
It's not in controversy, so we can move on. Yes, Doc, briefly, what do you say to that sort of approach? When let me get Bobin's Asamoah's view first. When Dominic Nitul appeared before Parliament, he said the president didn't use what presidential jet for security reasons. He never said what the security reasons are. He only explained that the president needed to travel with many people, and that was the reason. Do you know why the President Akufo-Addo is still not using this jet?
Thank you, Samson. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Samson, you are graying. I can see it from here.
That's right.
The second thing is that I cannot endorse the invoice Okudzeto Ablakwa has put out, but I can clearly say that he's put up a stellar performance in damning the president. This is what I call spin. I couldn't have done better myself. Now, this is an old argument that politics has deferred till now. When President Kufuor was leaving office, he tabled at the time that he wanted to buy a large presidential jet and two smaller ones to serve us better. And at the same time, he was building a presidential palace. Politics at the time dictated that these moves were condemned. So when the NDC came into power, they abandoned the large jet and acquired the smaller one. Now that decision has come to bite us today. I think this is a straightforward matter. Instead of looking at invoices generated by Okudzeto Ablakwa and damning the president and his luxury and disrespect to Ghanaians and all that, it is time to take a decision. And there are two decisions we can take. Should we bite the bullet and buy a large enough presidential jet that serves our purposes effectively? Or should we continue with a hybrid where we have the presidential jet we consider insufficient for some times, and therefore we use commercial means? Now, when it comes to commercial means, there's the opportunity to travel by regular commercial airlines, first class, or to rent. So the question then becomes whether or not, as a nation, where we are going, we will still have presidents, whether we revise the constitution or not. Presidents need to travel. Anybody who says that we would have received vaccines and so the president shouldn't have traveled is not doing us justice, given the role of Ghana within Africa and the world. The president is a very prominent person in COVID management throughout the world. And whether it's COVID management, debt relief, or establishing a new world order, debt management and otherwise, the leading president must be seen to be advocating where it matters. Presidential travel is beyond dispute. The question is, how do we do it? And I think that as a state, we have arrived at the point where whatever decision we take will benefit the next president or disadvantage the next president. So it is not about debating the merits of what Akufo-Addo is doing or has done. He is not in charge of his travels. National security is in charge of his travels. It's about what we do to stabilize the front. And to my mind, we need to acquire something that serves the nation well. And that means that that something must serve not only the president, but the other international travels that we do, because the military who are in charge of this process say that a very large aircraft or a large enough aircraft can also be used to service peacekeeping. Because we do a lot of peacekeeping airlifting. It costs us an average of 50 million a year, as Nitiwu told us. And so if we can invest in something that can be reconfigured and configured depending on who is using it, I think in the long run, it will benefit this country.
Thank you.
And of course, it will eliminate the political spinning about whether or not president loves luxury or not. I don't subscribe to a situation where the president rides a bicycle to Germany.
All right. Yes, Dr. Asante, what do you say?
These things, it confuses me. Because I really don't see why this is such a complicated matter. Why, for example, information has not been provided as to why the presidential jet is not adequate. As for the capacity issues, I mean, I'm completely befuddled by the whole argument. A president that is traveling, yes, I have never traveled on a presidential whatever, so I wouldn't know what are the critical people you have to have with you when you are on the plane. But I can just hazard a guess that it's not everybody that needs to travel with the president. Some people may have to go in advance of the president, take a commercial flight. They might even be in business class. These are all comfortable enough. For our situation that we are in, there are many things that me as Kojo Asante, if I had money, I would want to do, charter whatever and go luxury, whatever. But because of the circumstances I have to, as they cut my coat according to my size. So it cannot be justified we are spending that amount of money to charter a commercial plane or whatever, when there's not clarity as to what exactly is the problem with the presidential jet, what we have paid money already for. So I think we need that clarity, because it makes the conversation very murky and you're not really sure where we are going with it. Let us have clarity. What exactly is the problem with the presidential jet? What is it going to be? Do we need a policy regulations to regulate and insist that if there is a presidential jet, you must at all across the public service? For me, discretion always has to be regulated because it's public money, and it's very common in the public service. Somebody comes and says, "I don't like the carpet. I don't like the color. I don't change the distance. I want to extend here," and it's all discretionary, but it's money. So there's always a need for some guidance. If national security is raising a concern about, is it that the condition of the plane is a problem or what? Is it lacking some security features? Can we actually address it? Without that kind of information, it just makes this whole thing just unhelpful and just consumes information space, policy space, when we have all kinds of things to deal with. So I would say when Parliament resumes, the National Security Minister comes, provide us some information, right, so we can move forward.
We've run out of time, but Dr. Dosa, what do you say? And as I'm listening to Dr. Asante, I'm thinking, I've done a case in this country where a public officer is according to the presidential emoluments thing they do, is supposed to enjoy a certain status when they have to travel. And this officer gets a lot of invitations from abroad to attend set fora and all of that. They normally invite and they add a ticket to travel. But the person will always insist that the ticket is upgraded to her status. Let's go. Let me hear you.
Thank you very much, Samson. I think as far as foreign travels are concerned, in the public service, there is some level of regulation. And Samson, before I forget, I'm happy you have all of that years in your studios. We are very proud of them. And then Dr. Kojo Asante. Samson, I think we need a national conversation on the subject.
I'm a pempe boy. I'm a senior.
Thank you very much. You are brothers. But we have only one science college in Ghana.
And Dr. Dosa, we have how many farmers here?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Something we need a national conversation on the subject.
Right.
I think that it is not only about the president, but officials that travels with the president. So I want to agree with both Honorable Yabuabia Samoa and then Honorable Kujetu Ablakwa that we should have a national conversation as a possible, so that it will lead the way towards regulation, development of a policy, and even taking a decision as to whether we should acquire a bigger or a smaller flight that can help us mitigate costs and also ensure the safety of Ghanaian officials, including the president, as and when they travel to do official business.
Kweku is sending this message that many others have sent. He says, if the presidential jet isn't suitable, let's sell it and buy a new one. We may save money.
Something, if we have a policy, a comprehensive national policy on presidential and executive travel, within the policy, we would have a component that does this analysis, and the analysis will fit into the situation or the status of a presidential jet before a decision is even taken, whether to go commercial or not. So I believe it is a national conversation that we should have on an apolitical basis. So we take a decision and a policy guidance that would help the Republic of Ghana.
All right. Thank you very much. Yakubu Ibn Chamba says that every government requires guidance from the governed neutrals. The representative sample of the CDD post-election survey is too little, too less to make generalizations on the variables that serves a performance check for the government. All right. So that's one of some of the messages that have been brought in. Unfortunately, I am not in a position to read your messages. I wanted to try one from PK in Elembele, but time has run out on that. I'm sorry. My outfit, as always, is brought to you by Habel's Couture. And Habel's Couture is found at our Jeringano Gate, East Legon. You can call them 0200 841 988 841 988. That's Habel's Couture. Make contact with them and you will get the best that you deserve. Remember that Something Must Kill a Man, the play by Latif Abubakar, is showing at the at the Labadi Beach Hotel open air theater this evening at 7. Thank you very much. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. Thank you to Samio Kujetu Ablakwa, Kojo Pumpuni Asante, Yabuabia Samoa, and Dr. Odro Osai. Thank you very much.